in the homeless shelter that had been so important to my son and I at a critical time in our lives. And I said no thank you. I was concerned. My concern was they wanted to do a piece about someone with money, toys, and stuff. I said no thank you, more to it than that. We had further conversations. I expressed my true feelings, which were, if you want to do a piece about someone who's trying to do something with their life, with their family, and in their community, then I'm all for it. The resulting piece apparently was pretty good. But before we got there, I had to agree to do something I now know I would never do again. I had to agree to let people follow me with television cameras for 3 days. From New York to Chicago to San Francisco. Then they cut it down to 17 minutes. We all know how that works. And there's something about Barbara Walters saying your first and last name and you don't know what she's going to say next that make you pay attention. That thing ran on a Friday night. On Monday morning, the phone jumps off the hook. I got invitations to be on all of these great national and international television programs from people who did not know my name until the previous Friday night. So that's an easy no. Took another phone call from a guy in this place that I affectionately call Holly Weird. This guy gets me on the phone and he's got a great idea, he thinks. He wants to create a reality TV show based on homeless people. Wants me to be the judge. True story. He's going to take some homeless people off the street, clean them up and give them a job. And the one that goes on to do the most with their life is going to get a $500,000 house, $100,000 in cash, and all this other stuff put up by sponsors. I cannot repeat in public what I said to that man. I can't do it. But the gist of it was, homelessness is not a game. But if you think it is, I already won, so send me my money. Never heard from him again. Never heard from him again. Like everybody else in here, I got a pretty intense day job. I tell my team, I'll take one more of these calls, then I got to get to work. Guy gets me on the phone. He's clear, concise, compelling. He says pretty much the following. I'm a producer, I'm in the movie business. I'm not the biggest name in the business, but if you come out to LA and take a meeting, lost me right there. Take a meeting. What the hell does that mean? Hey, you're like, I live in Chicago. I will take a train, take a bus, take a nap. I'm going to take a meeting. The point I'm trying to make is I'm not believing any of this stuff. I happen to be in Los Angeles, doing my day job. I agreed to go and take a meeting. You meet all these guys, they tell you all these great stories. Then we met these 3 guys from a production company called Escape Artists. Steve Tisch, Todd Black, Jason Blumenthal. The second we sat down with them, I knew these are the guys. I felt comfortable. One of the guys asked me a question. It was Steve Tisch. He says to me, I understand you said no to being on the biggest TV show in the world. Why would you do that? I couldn't think of another good answer, so I leaned into the guy and I asked him, you ever seen that movie Forrest Gump? He says, yeah, I saw that. Well, I went on to explain there was a scene in the film where Forrest inadvertently stumbled into an anti-war rally. They wanted him to speak out against the Vietnam War, but somebody pulled the plug. When they jacked it back up, what you heard Forrest say is, that's all I got to say about that. That's how I felt. That's all I got to say about that. Wrap the meeting up, get in the elevator. The guy who has set the meeting up looks at me and says, Chris, by the way, Steve Tisch produced Forrest Gump. I didn't know. Think about that for a second. Forrest Gump won 6 Oscars, was the 3rd highest grossing film in history, and I'm asking the man, had he seen this movie? That's what got the deal done right there. Because they knew this boy is the last Okie from Muskogee. He got no idea. Will Smith's name came up. I was totally not feeling it. Totally not. I remember sitting talking with my children. I'm explaining to Will Smith, we muster outer space. This story is about inner space, not outer space. It was my daughter who broke it down for me when she says, Papa, look, don't worry. If he could play Muhammad Ali, he could play you. Man, I was crushed. How do you become homeless? I like to talk about that, especially in light of things we've seen happen in our country the last 3 years. We have, in fact, seen the creation of a whole new class of homeless people, something that I call white-collar homeless. Went to school, worked hard, played by the rules, and the world changed. In my case, was it drugs? No. Was it alcohol? No. There's something just as lethal as both of them. It's called life. Life happens. As a young guy, 23 years of age, I had the opportunity of a lifetime. I had a chance to go to work for and become the protege of one of the top young heart surgeons in the country. His name is Dr. Robert Owens. We both met while we were in the military. I was a U.S. Navy hospital corpsman. Dr. Hey, one of the best things in my life in the Navy. But Dr. Ellis had been trained by two pioneers in cardiac surgery, Dr. Denton Cooley and Dr. Michael B. Bakey at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Texas. So for me, to have the opportunity to go to work for someone of that caliber in science and medicine was huge. I was 23 years old, single, no children. I had a chance to move to San Francisco, California. I took the job for $7,500 a year. Dr. Ellis and I worked together for 4 years. We co-authored and published numerous articles in many scientific journals. About this time, I met, fell in love with, moved in with, and had a child with this beautiful woman who had just graduated from the University of California Dental School. And becoming a parent for me was the most important, precious, and loving thing I've ever been a part of in my life. I was one of those little boys who grew up without a father. And not just without a father, but with a stepfather who was fond of reminding me every day, I ain't your daddy. You ain't got no daddy. Sometimes he put a 12-gauge shotgun right here just to make his point. I didn't know what a commitment was, but I knew what a promise was. And I promised myself as a 5-year-old boy, when I grow up and become a man and have children, my children are going to know who their father is. So when I became a parent, when I became a father, it wasn't just some biological extension of the bloodline. There was a whole lot of stuff came with that. I worked my way up to the top of the pay scale at the university. I'm now making $17,500 a year. My ex had not passed her boards, she could not practice. We got a baby, we're a family. I had to forget about a possible career in science. I had to forget about maybe a career as a physician. I got to take care of my family. I got a real job. I went into sales. The computer industry was in its infancy 40 miles south of San Francisco, down in the peninsula. We moved across the bay to Berkeley, California to save money. It meant a nightmare of a commute, but you do what you got to do. But I was now making $25,000 a year. And I thought, man, we would be okay. Big guys in the business that I was in at that time, the company's top salesman, I'll never forget this guy. He made $80,000 a year, and he used to walk like he was the NBC peacock. And I remember thinking, man, 80 grand, I want to walk like that. But one day, I happened to be at one of my accounts at San Francisco General Hospital, where there's never any place to park. And I come out into the parking lot and I see something that's the beginning of my life changing. I don't even know it. I see a guy that is absolutely the sharpest guy I've ever seen in my life. No flash, no bling, no BS, just sharp. And he's driving this gorgeous red Ferrari, slowly circling the parking lot looking for some place to park. I go up to the guy and I say, hey man, I'm coming out. You can have my parking place, but I got to ask you 2 questions. The two questions were, what do you do and how do you do that? Turns out this guy's a stockbroker. And not just a stockbroker, he's one of the top institutional salespeople on Wall Street, and he makes $80,000 a month. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in this room, but I'm pretty good with some numbers, dog. And I figured that out. One guy's walking around like the NBC peacock, the other guy was rolling like a rock star. I knew what I wanted to do. I started spending a lot of time with this guy in his office in downtown San Francisco, learning what a stockbroker does when I was supposed to be 40 miles away selling scientific equipment. A couple of things happened simultaneously. Number one, I began to accumulate a huge amount of parking tickets. Double parking, illegal parking, like the feet of meter. Number two, every place I went to interview, I heard the same word. No. No, no, no. From my ex at home, I heard a couple of other words. I remember them also. I believe they were delusional and unrealistic. She had a point. Major Wall Street firms have begun to require an MBA just to get into their institutional training programs. I had never gone to college. Didn't mean I wasn't smart. Didn't mean I wasn't bright. I just didn't have a college degree. I interviewed for a year. I've been asked many times, you interviewed for a year to get a trainee slot with no guarantee. Do you think it was racism? No, absolutely not. There's another ism, something called placism. Think about it. I had never gone to college, did not come from a politically connected family, had no money of my own to invest in the stock market. Who's going to do business with you? That's placism. That could affect anybody in this room. But I kept coming back. And I kept coming back for 1 year for one reason. My mother. I had one of those old-fashioned mothers who taught me from the very beginning that I could do or be anything I wanted to do or be. I believed it from the absolute very beginning. She would tell me every day, you can do or be anything you want to do or be. And apparently, I took it too far. I made up my mind, my first ambition in life, I made up my mind I was going to become Miles Davis. Mama said I could be anybody, I chose Miles. I studied music theory, I played trumpet for 9 years. I got pretty good. And when I say I wanted to become Miles Davis, I had it bad. People would ask me as a little boy, what you gonna be when you grow up? I had it so bad, I started talking like Miles, and I tell them, I'm gonna be Miles Davis.
That's funny.
Thank God my mother heard me say it one time. Mama heard me say it, she said, son, we need to talk. We sat down at the kitchen table, she explained to me, she says, baby, you're pretty good with that thing, but you can't be Miles Davis. Ain't but one, and he got that job. And when your mom put it to you look like that, you got to feel that. And I had to look at the facts. The facts were, at 18 years of age, Miles Davis was in New York City playing with Quincy Jones and Dizzy Gillespie. At the same age, I was playing with some boys named Pookie and Ray Ray. Hey, we were good. We were good, but it wasn't going to happen. But the point is, another very important decision was made as a young guy, and that decision was, I'm going to become world-class at something. I just had to find that one thing that turned me on as much as the music did. Find your button. What is that one thing that turns you on so much the sun can't come up soon enough in the morning because you want to go do your thing? Find your button. And the very first time that I walked into a Wall Street trading room, I knew, whoa, man, this is it. The ticket tables rolling, phones are ringing off the hook, people are screaming and shouting out orders, bodies are flying all over the place, tickets are getting stamped, and what looked like chaos to anybody else, for me, it was like I was reading a sheet of music and I could feel it, and I knew, this is where I'm supposed to be. I warned one branch manager down to the point that he says to me, Gardner, based on persistence alone, we will give you a shot. I quit my job. I will admit I was a little cavalier about how I did it. As a sales rep for a distributor, I had this big box of stuff I had to carry everywhere I went. 3 giveaways for our customers. Petri dishes, tissue slides, latex gloves, that kind of thing. I had to carry this box every day, everywhere I went. But this one day, I went into my manager's office and I said, I'm going to Wall Street. I quit. Now, if he was here, he would tell you I threw the box at him. That is not true. I will compromise and say it fell abruptly. I said, I quit. I'm out of here. I'm going to Wall Street. I went home and I told my ex, you know what? You said I couldn't do it, but guess what? I started in 2 weeks. I was pretty pumped up. All the way up to the point, I show up on the appointed day and time, only to find out that the man who made me the commitment had been fired the previous Friday. Nobody else knew who I was, why I was there, and did not care. Now, in the state of California, when you quit a job, that means no employment benefits, no health care, nothing. And worse than that, now I got to go home and tell this woman that I don't have a job. If you don't remember anything else I say here today, remember this. Unemployment will not help your relationship. Somebody in here know what I'm talking about. Think about it. We're a young family. She's a doctor who hasn't passed the boards. She can't practice. We got a baby. I'm the breadwinner, and I have quit my job thinking I'm going to Wall Street. Man, things got tough at home. I still had one shot to be in the business I wanted to be in the rest of my life. But before I could play it all the way out, I still got to take care of my family. Which means I did everything legal that I could to take care of my family and still pursue my dream. I cut grass, hauled rubbish, cleaned basements, I learned roofing, I learned painting. I did everything that I could to take care of my folks and still pursue my dream. Things are tough at home. Things are tense at home. Had a situation come up, probably never happened to anybody in this room but me. Had one of those arguments with my ex about nothing that only ended because we both fell asleep. We woke up in the morning, everybody's feet hit the floor, and guess what? We went at it again. The neighbors have heard enough of this. They don't know what's happening, what might happen, what could happen. They call the police. The police come, they want to make sure everything is fine. Take her over here, calm her down, talk to her. Take me outside, calm me down, talk to me. And then one of my friendly Berkeley police officers, just doing his job, says, you mind if I search your car? No, sir, go right ahead. Search the car? Nothing. Then again, just doing his job, says, well, let me just run this license plate through a computer. That was it. With interest and penalties, I had accumulated $1,200 in unpaid parking tickets trying to interview in downtown San Francisco the previous year. Double parking, illegal parking, like the feet of me. An honest question could be, you knew you had the tickets, why didn't you pay up? Well, the position I was now in, having to cut grass to put food on the table, every dollar that came in the door, I had to make a decision. I can pay the tickets or I can pay the rent. I did probably what every man in this room would have done. I paid the rent. I was taken to jail. Arrested, taken to jail, put in a jail cell with a murderer, a rapist, and an arsonist. And I'm in here on parking tickets. Let me tell you something. First thing you learn in jail. Everybody's got to tell their little jailhouse story, well, why are you in here? The first thing that I learned, according to the inmates, nobody did it. It's all circumstantial evidence or a setup. They asked me, well, why are you in here? And I told them, I'm in here for attempted murder, and I will try it again. I wasn't going to say I'm in on no parking tickets. It's like a chain of command had to get established. And to show you how a bad day can get worse, all of this happens on a Friday. Now somebody in here knows what that means.
Yep, you're in there all weekend.
We're not important until Monday, which means we cannot hold you in this filling little downtown Berkeley jail. We need this for our regular weekend customers. I was sent to a place called Sacramento State Penitentiary, where the most notorious inmate had chopped 23 people to death with an axe. And I'm up here on parking tickets. 10 days. And I'm going to say this because I know somebody's sitting out there thinking about it. You know what? If y'all got some parking tickets, you need to get up and walk out of here.
Wait, Robin wants it.
For 10 days, and all I can keep saying to myself is, does my son know I didn't leave him like my father left me? Does my son know I can't be there because of these circumstances? What does my ex say when my little boy looks at her and says, where's Papa? That's all I could think about for 10 days. It was making me crazy. But I had one more pressing issue. The last interview that I had to absolutely ace to be in the business I've now been in for 30 years, the last interview was set up one day before I'm to be released from prison. And something happened. And nothing will ever convince me it was anything other than the hand of God. There was a prison guard and there was a telephone. And I said to that guard, I've been pursuing a dream for a year. I got a chance to go to work at Dean Witter. It's one of the finest firms in the industry. I need to reschedule this one appointment. Will you please let me make this one phone call? Now, I had gotten my one constitutional call 10 days earlier. Not a second's hesitation. The guy dials the number, hands me the handset behind the bars. The conversation is brief and to the point. Mr. Costello, hey, it's Chris Gardner. Something has come up. Can I reschedule? Fine, done. Set it up day after tomorrow. Release from prison, interest and penalties forgiven. Then I did something. You ever know something in your gut nobody had to tell you? I went to the place we used to call home, Berkeley, California, and I looked through the window, and I knew it. They were gone. This woman took everything but the dust. But most importantly, she took my little boy. I still went on the job interview. Now in the movie, you saw Will Smith show up for this job interview wearing blue jeans with paint all over them. I wasn't just wearing blue jeans, I was wearing bell-bottom blue jeans. I was wearing bell-bottom blue jeans and a members-only jacket. I was the last member, I had a red one. I showed up at Mr. Costello's front door at 6:30 in the morning, and he says exactly what I would say to anybody who shows up at my front door at 6:30 in the morning dressed like that. Deliveries in the rear. I would have said the same thing, but I come right back at it when I explain. Mr. Costello, I'm Chris Gardner. Today is the biggest day of my business career. I must admit I'm underdressed for the occasion. So, yeah, you got that right. What happened? I could not think of a lie bizarre enough. I told the truth. It was the best thing I could have done. Turns out the man I'm talking to had been married and divorced 3 times. He started telling me stories about his ex-wives. Man, and that second one, I don't know why he never got married again. He goes on like that for 20 minutes and out of nowhere he says, you be here tomorrow morning, I'll personally walk you into the training room. Beautiful, I'm getting my shot, I'm hired. My base salary, $1,000 a month gross. I'm moving to a boarding house, Oakland, California, all I can afford. 3 meals a day in a room. My days as a trainee were the same as they are for anyone who ever started on the bottom of Wall Street or in any major sales organization. You do the one thing that no one else wants to do and everyone else thinks is beneath them, which is what? Cold call. Turn myself into a cold call machine 200 times a day with a rotary dial phone. I don't know if you guys in the back can see this, but see how this one finger is cocked out? That's my calling finger. 200 times a day. Every day. I will say this. This is the time for any of us in our business right now. You sit down at your desk in the morning, look at that finger. And if your finger is too straight, you know you ain't doing your thing. You want to break your finger, all right? And I make 200 phone calls every single day. And at night, the pain. When am I going to see my son? How much longer is this going to go on? My ex and I were in that unfortunate space where sometimes both of the adults start acting like children. And one parent feels like if the only way I can hurt you is to hit you over the head with the baby, I'll do it. My ex also began a little campaign to what I can now call emotional terrorism. Call me on the phone and let me hear my little boy scream and cry and hang up the phone. Now this is before Star 69, caller ID, and all this other stuff. But somebody in here will agree with me. There could be a room full of a dozen babies crying, and you know that's your baby or not. Put it out of my mind. Study, study, study. Pass my exam. Highest scoring class. Big deal. No reward. I get to come back the next day and make 200 phone calls. Goes on for months. Now one night, 1 o'clock in the morning, there's a knock at the door. You know who that is. It's my ex. The conversation is brief and to the point. I can't do this anymore here. I left my son with me. Just like that, that's how we became homeless. That's what I meant when I said life happens. The boarding house did not allow children. My son and I were instantly evicted. We joined a class of people invisible even among homeless people. It is estimated that 12% of all the homeless people in America have jobs to go to work every day. In some communities, that number is as high as 30%. Working families homeless. I'm not talking about the guys outside with the cups. You didn't see us because we were at work. Before we began filming Pursuit, it was very important to Will Smith and I that he see, smell, and touch places my son and I had to live for a year. To his credit, the biggest movie star in the world cannot go any place without a 4-man security detail. He says, no, it's me and you. Let's go for a walk. 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, through the streets of San Francisco. The very first place I take him is down to the subway system. And he's such a bright guy. The first thing he said to me is, a lot of these people look like they dressed to go someplace. Yeah? Well, a lot of them are dressed to get up and go to work in the morning. My son and I instantly evicted. We did the only thing that we could do. We moved into a series of hotels. $25 a day and a color TV. Do the math. You're making $1,000 a month gross. And that man wants us $25 a day cash every day, Saturday and Sunday. It won't work. We moved down the street. $10 a day on a black and white TV. Imagine who's living next door to you and your baby for $10 a day. That's a different world. It won't work. My son and I have begun to go to church every day. Live Memorial Church, Reverend Cecil Williams, food for the soul, every day. But just as important as food for the soul was something else, and that was just food. because in the basement of that church is something called Mo's Kitchen, where they served 1 million meals a year to folks who were in need. My son and I were in need. We ate more than our share, especially my son. My son today, 68 inches tall, weighs 350 pounds. That all started in the basement of that church. I tell the reverend, every time I see him, you ought to let folks know what could happen to their kids. Last year we celebrated 49 years of his service to that church. 49 years we celebrated. And he let me know a few years ago that at that time he had never seen a man standing in the food line with a baby. He'd seen women with children, but he'd never seen a man. And he'd come up to me every day and ask me the same 2 questions. What you doing with that baby? Well, it's my baby. But what you gonna do with it? I'm gonna keep it. I've been asked many, many times, why didn't you give the baby to your mother? Well, you know what? That was not my mother's baby. That was my baby. I made that promise to myself as a 5-year-old boy. When I grow up, become a man, and have children, my children will know who their father is. But sometimes in your life, you get a chance to walk the walk. This was mine. I didn't know where the next step was taking us many days. I didn't know where the next meal was coming from, but I knew this, we were going to be together. The Reverend started the first homeless hotel in America. 2 blocks away from Neiman Marcus, 2 blocks away from Gucci in downtown San Francisco, is the beginning of one of the worst ghettos in the country. It's called the Tenderloin. He started this program for homeless women with children. But he said to me, you know what? I see something. Y'all homeless, but you're not hopeless. Y'all will stay here with us. Here's the deal at the homeless hotel. You got to be out by 8 a.m. You cannot come in before 6 p.m. You're going to work or you're going to look for work. When you leave the room, take everything in the room that's yours with you. It's first come, first served. No guarantee there'll be a roomie when you come back. Many nights they worked. Every day for a year, you would see me, my son, his stroller, a duffel bag with all his clothes in them, a briefcase and umbrella, the biggest bag of Pampers in the world, 1 suit on my back, 1 suit in a hanging bag, and we hit it. Every day for a year. And I did say Pampers. Major difference between reality and the film. In the film, J.D. Smith plays my son as a 5-year-old. They did that for the dialogue. My son was 14 months old. That changes everything. I had 2 suits, 1 blue, 1 gray. The joke around the office started, oh, that's Chris Gardner, he's reenacting the Civil War.
Wow.
Some days it's with the North, some days it's with the South. It's funny now, that shit wasn't funny at the time. One day it's going to be different. All that running, you saw Will Smith doing the movie, all that running was real. Think about it. I'm working commission-only sales, and I know if I stay on this phone another 5 minutes, I can get this commission. But if I stay on this phone another 5 minutes, I'm going to miss the bus. And if I miss the bus, I'm late to the center. If I'm late to the center, I'm late to the shelter. If I'm late to the shelter, there are no more rules. Being a young father, committed to breaking the cycle of men who are not there for their children, there were days I chose to stay on that phone. And that meant we slept wherever we could, which included train stations, bus terminals, hotel lobbies, public libraries, outside in the park at Union Square if the weather permitted, airports. This was pre-9/11. There was nothing unusual. The airports were open 24 hours. There was nothing unusual about seeing a man, a baby, and a whole bunch of bags. My one residual hang-up that I have from this experience of time in my life, I got this thing about bags. I got a room in my house with nothing but bags in it. If it doesn't have a hole in it, and you can tie a knot in it, that's a good bag. The one thing my son remembers, and it was Oprah. When we finally did this show, she asked him, what's the one thing you remember about this time in your life? And what he said made my soul smile. What he said was, all I remember is every time I looked up, my father was there. That's all I remember. We all know there are some children that can live in million-dollar houses but cannot say that about their father. He didn't know we were homeless. He did not need to know. He did not know that some of the times he ate and I didn't wasn't because I wasn't hungry. He didn't need to know that. He did not know that some of the times we both ate and got a hotel room, that was only made possible because I had just sold blood. He didn't need to know that. And I say he did not need to know that because that's what fathers do. And the truth of the matter is, we all know, the truth of the matter is, sometimes the best father is a good mama. I know something about that. He did not know. If you ever see the film again, they do it very subtly. The little boy is eating, but the father's napkin, knife, fork, spoon had not been touched. He didn't need to know. There were times I let my son spend the night with friends. They had children, they loved them. But I also knew they were going to eat that night. I didn't have money to feed them. I slept under my desk at Dean with it. I'd get up in the morning, put on a blue suit, a gray suit, and I'd make them 200 phone calls. When there was no place else to go, there was a train station in Oakland, California, and there was a restaurant that worked for us for two reasons. It was clean and you could lock the door. Now, with the film, you saw Will and his son play this game about being cavemen. We need to find a cave, someplace to spend the night. I had a game to play with my son. The game was real simple. The game was called Shh. And that meant that no matter what anybody said on the other side of that door, no matter how hard they pound on the door, we're not here. We're invisible. We lived like that for a year. It took me that long to save enough money, $20 at a time, for us to get a place to call home. Even after I saved the money, I would show up to rent properties, and some people wouldn't rent to us. They make judgments on us. The first thing they ask is, where's the baby's mama? What happened? Well, what's that got to do with anything? I'm gainfully employed, I got good credit, I got the references, and I got the money right here. They wouldn't rent to us. One of my favorite parts of the book, The Pursuit of Happiness, is the story of my son and I getting our first place to live after being on the streets for a year. It's one of them things I'll never forget. I remember like it was this morning. I had my son in the stroller. I got the stroller covered up with plastic bags from the cleaners. It's cold, it's wet, it's winter time. I don't want him to get sick. But I saw this one little house that was no different than any other house in the neighborhood, but with one exception. There was a rose bush. And I had never seen roses in the ghetto in my life. I went over and started talking to this little old man who was outside, and turned out he owned the property. Told him where we've been and what we've been through, and he cut me off. He said, son, you ain't got to tell me nothing else. Y'all can move in here. We moved in. Slept on the floor our first night. And this is just one of the ways that issues become generational for children. My son had seen me carry everything we own, everywhere we went, every day for a year. It had become normal for him. But on this day, we get up and walk out of the house, I'm not carrying anything. My little boy gets upset. He says, Papa, you forgot this. We had to bring our stuff. I don't know the words to convey to you what it feels like to be able to tell your son, you know what, son? We got a key now. We home. We're going to carry stuff for you. I don't know what the days of the word that feels like, the lightness of it. I remember this. We both skipped to the train that day. That was a good day. And it's funny how life can be sometimes. That train station, 2 blocks from our new house, the same train station we used to sleep in. Something else very important started to happen at this train station. They begun and opened a daycare center, a place called Happiness, and they did spell it with a Y. And what made that so important to us is right now, I got a 3-hour commute on a bus and a train just to get to the one place I'm comfortable leaving my child. 3 hours on the bus or 2 blocks down the street. The problem was the daycare center would not take children who were not potty trained. Man, we went to potty trained boot camp. Somebody in here know what I'm talking about. That is a major quality of life issue, is it not? 3 hours on the bus or 2 blocks down the street. And I told my son, I said, no, son, let's just sit here and talk a while. We're going to sit here till something happens. As we were set up now, we didn't get home till 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. And what that meant in my own neighborhood in Oakland, California, what that meant was the ladies of the evening have begun their shifts. And for months, these ladies of the evening saw me, this baby, and a stroller. They never saw a woman. They knew something's different, something ain't right. They started trying to give them candy. And I said, no ma'am, no thank you. I didn't let them have sugar until he was 4 years old. But one day, they started to give him $5 bills. And I will tell you, were it not for those ladies of the evening giving that baby that $5 bill, there were days I could not have fed him. So till this day, hey, the ladies of the evening are all right with me.
Don't judge them.
It don't mean I'm in business with them. Don't look at me like that. That's what I'm saying. Okay? Don't be out there tweeting that. When we think about that for a second, we didn't have a term to describe something of that nature then. I now know that would qualify. You could call that a random act of kindness. We see y'all out here. We know y'all are struggling. We don't know what the situation is, and we don't care. Here's $5. Go feed your baby. That was the beginning of us turning our lives around. That, 200 phone calls a day and a few friends. Got in touch with some friends who hadn't heard from us in a while. They all kind of knew the situation. And I know for a fact, conversations just like this are happening all around this country right now between friends, families, and folks. People saying to each other, well, how can we help you? Hey, Chris, look, man, we got an extra bed in the garage. Nobody's using it. You guys come and get it. You can have it. We got a card table down in the basement. We don't play down there anymore. Why don't you put that in the kitchen? That can be your kitchen set. Friends, families, and folks, y'all come get this stuff. Now, we go get this stuff. And I told you, well, obviously, we don't have a car. No problem. And I told you, my son today is 6'8", 350. He was an even bigger baby. You see what my hands were? This boy was like the black baby Huey. carry him, the groceries, my briefcase, the umbrella, the stuff, laundry, everywhere we went. So in our old neighborhood in Oakland, California, there were these shopping carts from the grocery stores that kind of got reappropriated to the community. So the joke between my son and I is that's our car. We get the car, we come pick up the stuff. Normally you walk outside the front door, 2 blocks in any direction, you will find one of these cars. We're out one day looking for the car. The little boy figures we walk far enough, he stops dead in his tracks. He looks at me, he says, Papa, where you parked the car? He didn't know. He didn't need to know. We're in the car one day rolling up the streets, it starts to rain, we're both drenched. My son looks up at me, he says, Papa, one day, can we get a car with a top on it? He didn't know, and he didn't need to know. But I kept making them 200 phone calls, and I'm growing this little book of business, and I know we're going to be okay. Well, one day, you ever have something happen that wasn't the worst thing, it just happened at the worst time?
Yeah.
Got home one day only to find out that my local utility couldn't wait another day to get that $19 over and turn my lights off. I didn't know whether I was going to quit, crack, or cry. After a year of the most intense struggle of my life, I began to doubt myself for the very first time. I had to wash my son that night by candlelight. And I'm washing this baby and I'm asking myself these doubting questions for the first time. How much longer can I do this? What's going to happen next? Where am I trying to get us to? My son, 2 years old, stood in the bathtub, he looks me in the eye, and he said the most important thing he ever said in his life. Papa, you know what? You were a good papa. Oh, man, come on. That was not fair. I'm throwing myself a pity party. And this 2-year-old boy telling me, you a good papa. That's one of them things my mama would say, boy, if that don't get your fire going, your wood must be wet. I tell young people, every opportunity I get, if you ever want to mess your parents up, go up to them, put your arms around them, say thank you, and walk away. That would mess us up. Because we all know something going on. Something ain't right. But I kept making them 200 phone calls, and every day in our office, the same thing would happen. Every day around noon, this little old man would come in and see this gorgeous female broker who sat next to me. None of my business. I'm sitting there wearing a blue suit, a gray suit, and I make these 200 calls. This guy watches me for a year. And one day he comes up to me and he says, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. Here's my card. Come see me. Man, thinking this is a potential client, I go see this guy. Wrong. This little old man was not a potential client. This little old man was the managing general partner for Bear Stearns in San Francisco, and he was coming to see his girlfriend. And I got to tell you something. Now I have to say this. I don't want to get distracted, but I do have to say it. For me to see what's happening to that firm, Bear Stearns, it's been like watching the house you grew up in burn, and ain't nothing you can do about it. We all heard the stories. The CEO lost $1 billion. Some other investor lost $1 billion. So what? What about the people who lost everything? What about the people who worked at that company 25, 30 years, had their stock put away, thinking they got the retirement taken care of, wake up one day and find out it's worthless. And now you're 55, 57 years old, you got to come out and find a job in an economy that's severely contracting, not expanding. What about those people? I'm telling you, there's going to be a cost here in human capital that's incalculable. But I go see this guy, and he tells me the history of the firm and how the firm was built by entrepreneurs with a strong work ethic. And he says to me, I've seen your work, and you know what? If you come over here, I will make you a star. Then he asked me a question. What do you need to be here? I had to figure it out. What's he asking me? He was asking me my salary requirements. No one had ever asked me that before. I had been making it on $1,000 a month gross. I said the biggest, most obscene number that would come out of my mouth, which at that time was $5,000. Done. $5,000 a month, 50% commissions, guaranteed for a year. By the way, here's 1 month's advance. Go buy yourself some new clothes. I went out and bought my first 2 pinstripe suits. One blue, one gray. I went to one of some boys named Weinberg, Feinberg, and Seinberg. They started calling me Gardnerberg. Old man Weinberg comes up to my desk the very first day. So you want to learn this business? Yes, sir, I want to learn this business. Well, dress British and think Yiddish. What the hell did that mean? I didn't know, but I was going to find out. The very first day, I get this phone call from a Mr. Greenberg. I don't know Mr. Greenberg, but everybody else in the room did. They make it real clear. Take the call. Chris, this is Ace. And I want you to know, Bear Stearns was not built by people with MBAs. Bear Stearns was built by people with PhDs. Now, we're glad you're here. Get to work. Click. Whoa, who was that? That was Alan H. Greenberg, Chairman, CEO, Senior Partner, Bear Stearns. What's a PhD? Poor, smart, with a deep desire to become wealthy. Man, I have found the promised land. It makes sense to us. Let's call people that we know have a whole lot of money. Midland, Texas. Let's call them up. Midland, Texas had more millionaires due to the price of oil for one reason. That was it. The price of oil. They have more millionaires than any place else in the country. Let's